Hi, so I'm here with Craig Forster. Craig has held senior roles in sales and business development for international tech companies such as CGI, CSC,
Fadata.
Fadata, and Capgemini, all before discovering the principles between how our experience is created and deciding to share them with others through his coaching practice. Craig, is there anything that I've missed off that you'd want people to know about you?
No, that's fine. Yeah. Well, yeah. If anyone wants to know more detail, the sales experience before coaching involved all sorts of tech aspects: consultancy, infrastructure, outsourcing, software, application management, consultancy, you name it. Yeah, complete range of IT services.
Amazing. So across the whole spectrum. To get us kicked off, can you share a bit about your early career? So what it is that you dreamt of doing and how that evolved over time.
Yeah, early career. Well, I graduated in electrical and electronic engineering with a BSc and a master's, and I always imagined I would go into technology, sort of manufacturing. Really, that was the intention of the degree, doing electronics and stuff. And I ended up working in designing avionics systems for military aircraft. And early on in that career, I was fortunate to be traveling all over the States. The first time I'd been abroad, I remember that, 21, traveling all over, looking for companies to manufacture the circuits that I'd been part of designing back in the early days. And I was dealing with a lot of sales and marketing people. And I remember having an epiphany early on and thinking, right, that's what I want to do. I was realizing after university, this is it, right? I sit at a desk designing circuits and stuff. And then that exposure to all these companies gave me, just like an insight, I suppose, that I fancied being doing that, representing the company, telling people about the company, showing people around the company, and being on the sales and marketing side of things. I got a glimpse of that then and wanted to find a way to get there.
Were there any particular moments or people that inspired you at that start of your journey?
It was just not one particular person, but it was just that whole experience of we were the people buying, and there were various sales and marketing directors and things that were hosting us at these companies and telling us about how they could support us and things like that. And it was just the experience of multiple of those that I thought, if I fancy that, I fancy doing exactly that kind of stuff.
Amazing. And then looking back, are there standout moments in your career?
Career overall?
Mm.
Well, I transitioned. I found a way to transition into a sales career from that. I didn't quite know how to do it, so it was a case of following the breadcrumbs. And I thought, how do you do it? How do you learn sales? That was the question I asked myself. And I thought, well, IBM's good at technology sales. Let's find a way to get into IBM. And I managed, like, I opened the newspaper and there was an advert for a job working jointly with IBM in Portsmouth Poly, now university. And I thought, yeah, do that job so that I can get into IBM, and then maybe I can work my way into sales. So that was the first moment of a transition from one direction of career into the other. And turned out it was a bit of a dead end in the sense that there was no opportunity to get into sales with IBM. They were bringing all their back office experienced staff to the front line at that time. They didn't want new bucks who would just come in to do that. So I exited that into a sales training program with Unisys. And so that was a highlight. It was a competitive process to get into pretty renowned, I think it was 9-month sales training program, learning all about sales and technology and working in different industries and really getting to know all that world. So that was a milestone for me to transition out of one direction into another direction. And then I suppose the other highlight, if I look at over all my career, I think about 11 or 12 times in different companies, I was a top performer and won president awards and platinum awards and things like this in my sales role in different companies. So I was pretty proud of that. Doing that in different companies, and in some companies multiple years. So I think those were highlights, and there were other highlights like bringing new solutions to market and being the salesperson that was the first to bring new solutions to the UK market, for example, when breaking new ground with long sales cycles to achieve that. So there were a few examples of that. The first sale of this, the first sale of that, bringing new offerings to life for the companies I was working for. So I was quite pleased about that too.
Amazing. And what do you put that success down to? So actually making it to P Club numerous times and being the first mover on a new solution.
What I put it down to, sort of a determination and a tenacity is one of my things. Wanting to be successful, keen to be the first and break new ground. But also, I think the ability to build relationships with potential customers was always a really important part of that, particularly if these were companies where they didn't already have a relationship with you. You had to really be somebody that could develop relationships with new people, and new companies or new parts of companies that we might have been present in other areas in. So I think that's one of the things that I brought to that, and also being focused on the customers, the clients' problems and challenges, really understanding those and relating what we had to what they were looking to achieve. So rather than trying to sell them stuff, it was about trying to show how what we had would help them with the objectives they had.
Amazing. So there's a lot of kind of matching the solution to the problem in there.
Yeah.
Can you talk a bit more? Oh,
yeah, I'd like to think so. I mean, some of my favorite and bigger sales were spending a lot of time really tuning into the client's objectives and understanding them, and focused on their business goals, and then showing how our solution would help them achieve what they're interested in, because they were always less interested in our solution, of course, naturally being interested in their business goals. So I was interested in that too, first and foremost.
And you alluded to a fairly long sales cycle for some of the work that you did.
Mm-hmm.
How did you go about kind of building that relationship and maintaining that sense of connection throughout that?
Well, I remember one of these sales cycles of bringing a new solution to the UK market. I looked back and it was 18 months from the first time I had a conversation with a person in this company. Generally, deal cycles were sort of between 6 months could happen, 6, 9 months, 12 months for the kind of high value things that I was involved with selling. But it could take 18 months when you were breaking new ground. There was a lot more to prove. So it was always about keeping in touch, keeping in touch, even if the time wasn't right now. When we had new successes, I would share that information with potential clients, even if they weren't in an active buying cycle. I would keep in touch and see how things were going with their objectives. Any new news I would share. So if there was an opportunity to keep in touch and maintain the relationship, I would always be doing that, even if the time wasn't right now. So I never wanted them to feel I was trying to push a sale. I was developing a relationship, and each of those has their own life cycle as to when it's the right time for somebody to make some changes.
Nice. So it's not just kind of, oh, your contract renews in 9 months with a competitor, I'll speak to you in 8.
Well, exactly. Yeah. Well, I mean, and the degree to which they'd want to speak to you depended on the company and things like that. But I always saw it as developing relationships, basically, for whether or not they bought from me and the companies I was with.
So sales can be pretty tough, and tech can be pretty tough. What was one of the most challenging parts of your career, and how did you navigate through that?
What, challenging personally or with this stuff? Any challenge, yeah.
Either way you want to go with that question.
Um, Challenges. Well, we always had challenging targets, and they got bigger every time. So um, I remember distinctly one year when we our targets had significantly been increased, and the first reaction was like, "Well, this is crazy." Like,
Mhm.
this is actually crazy. You know, when the objectives come down from on high, you used to have to do X, now you have to do 2X. But, well, where's the evidence that 2X is possible? But I remember one particular year thinking, okay, it is what it is. I'm going to do 5X. And I did. So lo and behold, I mean, I just set my sights on, rather than seeing the impossibility of things, to go beyond that into, well, what if it's possible even beyond that. So that was one of the years I was in a platinum club, actually achieved my best year in sales ever. I can distinctly remember setting my sights on let's just do this. So that was a challenge, and it ended with a positive result. Other challenges, in as is inevitable in big companies, there's constant restructuring and reshuffling. So there were times when whole teams were put at risk of redundancy, and unexpectedly. So that used to happen almost annually. I mean, it was like restructure, everyone's at risk. And so I learned to navigate that without, without fear really, and just working through all that kind of stuff. And I know there was one particular company which was a brilliant company to work for, but they moved their headquarters from London to Germany, and the whole management team was made redundant just because of the restructure in that way. And but I went on to another good job, so which got me into new skills. So what I found is that even those challenges, which I saw as, oh no, oh no, what's going to happen now? Initially, it always worked out even better.
Yeah, and I'm really curious actually when you talk about the fact that it was 2x your targets and you decided to set your sights at 5x. What was the rest of the team like? Because having worked amongst sales teams, it can go either way, where the majority of the team take the view that you do and they're going to smash it out the park, or the majority of the team are grumble and there's always people in between.
Um, I think this was very much an internal game for me, and everyone just would deal with the targets in their own way. So I don't know. I mean, I think I never felt there was never much grumbling in sales teams that I was involved with anyway. I mean, it is what it is. Get on with it. Do the best you could. But I think it's possible some people might have stayed in the zone of this is never going to be possible, I suppose. But it didn't. It wasn't very on the surface. So I'm not totally sure. It's just that in I can remember that, Kate. I'm very clear on remembering, right, I'm going to do, this much more than that. And there were other years when I didn't think like that, and it wasn't like that. So it's interesting. But I don't think that, I think whatever internal game is going on for people, we're all different in terms of the inner game we're playing. So I'm not quite sure exactly what people would have been thinking.
Okay, so really it was kind of you focused on your game, and not being kind of pulled by the tide either way.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Through all of those challenges, what kept you going?
Just a determination, focus, consistency, tenaciousness, wanting to succeed at the objectives I had and exceed those. Um, yeah, and it's just I there's the rewards as well. There was doing the job, objectives, getting the rewards for it, and that enabled a number of things. So.
Mm. We both worked in tech, and you have alluded to the fact that you kind of loved learning, loved the new challenges, loved taking on new things. When you think about all the advances that in tech, what would have changed your career path or influenced you if you were starting today?
Well, the big, yeah, what if I was starting today? Well, there were some big shifts while I was in the corporate world, which I never got closely involved with, but I saw the, there's always waves. Like at one stage in my career, there was a wave of the database providers. There was all the big relational database wave, and then things began to get more sophisticated on that. These days, and I also saw the wave of CRM, the different CRM companies, and workflow and imaging and all that. So the wave after wave, new trends, and I was involved with some of that in the big companies that I was working with. I think these days, I think well, clearly the rise of artificial intelligence and embedding that into services in some ways is pretty critical. Data services, even more critical than ever. So I'd put AI in the category of automation. I mean, there's always been automation in the mix of IT, but I think if you were entering and thinking where do I want to get involved, then doing something in the world of automation and stuff, I think would be a hot spot for sure. Yeah, the other wave that happened while I was in the tech world was cloud computing and shared services in that wave, which has just become a big part of the industry these days. So it probably still that would be an area to be involved with, I think, because it's a growing area still.
Yeah, it's been fundamental to my whole career as well. Like we've moved from cloud to it being SaaS, and
Yeah,
I remember like a very clear time where everything was cloud. Now everything has AI embedded. At one point, everything was a cloud solution.
yeah,
And I had a sticker that just said the cloud is someone else's computer.
yeah. I think I've seen that. I do keep my eye on the industry a bit, and I see some companies decide to bring stuff back in house because they suddenly get a bit scared about security and where things might be headed. But I think just this inevitable move towards certainly the low hanging fruit goes first towards cloud computing, less core services, etc. And in fact, in one of the companies I work for, I remember I was involved with a particular solution from the moment it was like on-premise software installations, and I was part of the uh, I suppose, strategically shifting that from on-premise software installations into online, providing a SaaS-based service. Although if we hadn't done that, the product would have died. So we were able to do that. Competition was bringing that in, and we began to change our game and get competitive again. And we had to provide SaaS-based services. So I think that's a trend which has continued. I was active in IT sales and will continue even more.
Absolutely, because we're now working in such a global environment that even the stuff that is on-prem is probably still hosted in a way that's globally accessible and just acts like a local cloud.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
When you think about your role today, how does technology play in the field compared to when you began and kind of what you do today?
Well, from coach now I'm a coach. I'm a life and executive coach, which I love, and I've got my own business, and that has been completely enabled by online video conferencing, basically. So that trend in technology, I mean, thinking when I started my career, showing my age, there wasn't really email that I can remember. So there wasn't the internet, so it's come a long way. And certainly one of the enablers of what I do now is online. So I've got clients all over the country. I've got clients in different countries. So it's incredible. Does mean you're spending a bit of time in front of the computer, but then if I was working in the corporate world directly, probably doing a lot of that as well anyway. So the ability to work anywhere, anytime that's the technology that's had the biggest impact on me. I don't need much else as a coach. I mean, obviously there's website technologies and all that kind of stuff, but really the main one for me is just the ability to communicate, conduct my business with clients over Zoom. I tend to use, or any other service, but I use Zoom. In fact, one client we're using Teams, because that's what the company uses, and just various messaging services. So and social media connections to develop connections all over the place. So those are the main tools for me.
What would you say is becoming invaluable to your day to day?
Invaluable.
Mm.
What technology wise?
Technology wise, yeah.
Well, just Zoom. I couldn't do well. Like if there wasn't online video conferencing, video one to one or group, because I do some group things as well. If that wasn't there, it would significantly change the game. I'd have to create an in-person thing, which I don't really know if I'd want to do actually. So that would just have a load of ramifications. So the wave of online acceptance, which is I think even more accelerated during the pandemic, when even my dad knows how to use, well, not we don't use Zoom, but we use WhatsApp video or Messenger video, or you know what I mean. Just like people of all, my dad's 80, 85, people of all ages comfortable using online video technology. So that's the thing that would be difficult to do with that, but it would not be impossible. Just it would mean a change to the model.
Yeah, a significant change to the model because I feel almost like video conferencing, it came in slowly, it boiled the frog. So if it was suddenly to go away, it
Yeah,
would be a sudden shock to the way that we work.
yeah, definitely. I think that would be if somebody pulled the plug on video conferencing. It would be well, as long as we got a phone though. I mean, that's the thing. We just have to change how it worked. I've very occasionally done coaching by phone. It's mainly on video though. But I mean, we're adaptable creatures. We just adapt.
That's true. I think, yeah, when you said phone, I was like, we'd lose so many non-verbal cues, but you still hear tone of somebody's voice, you hear
Yeah,
silence.
you do. And I think actually sometimes it's interesting doing that because then you can tune into like a heightened sense of awareness through one sense, hearing, rather than processing all senses. So it's quite almost in a way quite a good exercise to see what do I notice, what do I notice, what do I really notice just by listening to somebody's voice where I've got nothing else to process or to take into account. So, but I obviously listening to it, taking it all in is a richer experience. But yeah, it's something to experiment with.
The next one to touch upon gratitude.
Hmm.
Who or what, as you look back, are you most grateful for in your career journey?
Well, I would say all the people I've worked for that gave me a job, um, selected me versus whoever else they were considering, and I've had some great managers along the way, and very grateful to all of them for the opportunity and for being great managers and kind of caring. I think that struck me the most and was really important to me as managers. They cared. I got a real sense that they cared at a human level. They're very focused on objectives. Fair enough. You've got the pressure of holding those team objectives and things. But despite that caring, I also along the way had some experiences with bosses where there didn't seem to be that element of care, which was a completely different experience. So I'm grateful to all of those, and it's been the majority that cared about the human being that they, was on their team, and that showed up. That showed up. It shows up um, when things happen unexpectedly. Like one time, if I was just talking to a former manager of mine, a boss of mine, when my dad had a heart attack. I was in the thick of sales activity in the office and getting ready for stuff, and got a phone call. My dad's had a heart attack, and my boss Graham, he just said, "Right, drop everything, get a plane, go and visit, go for it." Suddenly nothing else mattered. The humanity showed up, and I'm forever grateful for that.
That's amazing. And I think that's it's often called out as the difference between just managing humans as a resource
Hmm.
to really kind of leading and working with people as humans.
Yeah, definitely. And it was just what resonated with me and was the leader I wanted to be as well, to be focused on the objectives because that's what you paid for, but then the objectives won't be achieved without a focus on the people. So, you can't do it yourself. And when I ended up managing a team at the end, I was able to sort of put some of those things into practice, cared about the people, yeah, as best I could.
I like that. What's one piece of advice that you would like to leave people with?
Piece of advice. What, in relation to anything in particular, or?
In relation to careers, what's one piece of career advice that you would leave people with?
Career advice. I would say follow your passion. Follow your passion. Follow what you're drawn to want to do, and it need have no reason. Like one of my favorite things that Michael Neal shares, and I think it's probably been shared by others, but the degree to which you want something is inversely proportional to all the reasons why you think you should have it or want it. And what I'm talking about in following your passion is tuning into that. What do I really want here? And that might just be the very next step. You don't have to have it all laid out. Like my career, when I look back at my career, starting out being an electronic engineer, I could never have predicted the path. In fact, and now I got a coaching business, so there's no way I could have predicted that. I've just each time followed my developing passion, which evolves and changes over time. So I would stay true to that, because if you find out you're doing something that you do not love, it will not last. And if you find out you're doing something which you're not feeling authentically yourself in, that will not last. And all of that will be sources of stress, which is not sustainable on an ongoing basis. So stay close to that and enjoy it, have fun, get this opportunity to play the game of being human for a while. Enjoy it.
Nice. What's next in your game of being human? What's next for you?
I love serving my clients, my coaching clients, and I love being in the I was always interested in personal development, right from my university days, right from a psychology module we had in the middle of all this electronic engineering. It was fascinating, and I realized that lit the touch paper of interest in what makes us tick. And I was always reading about that and looking at that alongside my work. It was helpful in sales, and now I have the joy of being able to be in the heart of that with my business, helping people be their best selves and continue to explore what it means to be human for me and for my clients, and helping them as best I can live the best life for themselves.
Amazing. What would you like to bring into being?
What would I like to bring into being? Well, I think that I would like to bring into being two things. One is that people realize in this opportunity of the human experience, we get to create what we want for our life. It's a creation. And if you don't consciously create it, it will be what it will be. It'll just be it'll carry on largely like it is, and might be a little bit better, a little bit worse. So we have the opportunity to consciously take time and think, what do I really want? It's kind of the ultimate coaching question. What do I want? What do I really want? There's lots of different ways we can help uncover that for somebody, because it's not always present. So I would say that's helping people get clear on what they really, really want, and stepping into that is what's really interesting to me. And I think the other secondary point is, the world of sales that I was in, as in many careers, was a high stress environment in terms of how it was experienced by me. A lot of the time, at times extreme, because there were big numbers, big objectives at stake, big pay packets at stake for me and others, and bosses and shareholders, all the rest of it. And I'm absolutely convinced you can be successful without the stress. So it's and in fact, it's not just a case of being successful without the stress. I genuinely believe being more peaceful and calm is the way to have more success. More success that's more enjoyable. So helping people with that too. is passionate about that as well.
It's really powerful, and especially in sales where there's still elements like it's shifting, and I see it shifting, but there's still elements of like the idea that people deliver under stress, so they want their teams to be stressed.
Well, yeah, and I suppose it's a question of degree, right? Because we are designed to handle peaks of stress as humans. I mean, we have a stress response. We can deal with it in short bursts. The problem is when it becomes a persistent environment. It's just constant, and we're not designed for persistent stress. So I think, short-term bits and pieces of stress, perfect. We can do it. It's exhilarating, and in that regard, that can be part of the buzz. But it's and we can operate in short bursts like that with a kind of clarity, but it's just not sustainable on a consistent basis. And so I think it's important to find a way to access our best resources from the inside by not being stressed persistently.
There's that buzz and that push of getting it over the line, but that diminishes if you're just in a state of constant stress.
Yeah, and we're not in my experience, and I see in others, we are optimized for our best capacities of clarity and creativity and compassion and connection when we're not in a stress state. So all of those things are vital to any successful business, to be accessing those qualities, not just a high stress focused state.
Really unlocking that creativity.
Yeah, definitely. So a combination of help create the future you want to create in life in all of its departments, and then come into the things you're doing that away with more peace and calm, occasional stress and excitement, but not persistent overthinking, stress, worry, etc., because that takes the fun out of the game.
Absolutely. So my last question for you, how would you like to be remembered in your field?
How would I like to be remembered in my field? There's a park bench where I walk my dog in one of my favorite parks. And there's an inscription on the park bench which says something like, a life that touches others is a life that goes on forever. And that really strikes me, because when I pass away, I will have a park bench. And I don't know if I'll have exactly the same inscription, but something along those lines. My life will have been worthwhile if I've made a difference in other people's lives. So, as well as enjoying myself along the way too. So, yeah, that's why I love doing what I'm doing, because it just fills me up to have made some difference in other people's lives, basically.
Wonderful. I love that. So it's about a life of impacting others.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Craig. I think that draws us to a lovely close.